Hortensia's introduction in Chapter 7 is perfect. This one scene presents her as loud, annoying, and a little naive, but also as someone knowledgeable in her own right that shouldn't be taken lightly. In the span of one chapter, we're given a very clear picture of who Hortensia is. Or rather, who the game wants us to believe Hortensia is. This introduction in Chapter 7 also lays the crumbs for one of the most important parts of Hortensia's character beneath her surface-level traits, that being her deep respect and love for her father, King Hyacinth. Her next appearance in the story, Chapter 10, of course reinforces her love for her father through her pained reaction to his death, but also expands this idea beyond just a love for her father to a love for her family, through her concern for her sister Ivy's well-being. The most interesting side of Hortensia we see in this chapter, however, actually comes through in her conversation with Rosado. From the general personality tropes we saw from her in Chapter 7, most people would expect Hortensia to also be very arrogant and bratty, but here she humbly accepts full responsibility for her army's failure in that mission. The fact that she doesn't try to shift the blame at all doesn't really line up with how Chapter 7 seemingly wanted us to perceive her. Finally, in Chapter 14, we get to see Hortensia's cunning nature through how easily she tricks Queen Sephoria and the Somme Palace guards, as well as her weak and childish side as she slowly breaks down in tears, complaining about not getting what she wants. And in the end, we get to see Hortensia's plot fail, not because of any strong-arming, but because her love for her own family prevents her from being able to do harm to someone else's. Of course, all of this concludes after the Chapter 14 battle, where we see Hortensia deeply remorseful for misusing the power of the emblems and for what she tried to do to Queen Sephoria, bringing her inclusion in the main story to a close by having her join the fight against Sombron and her home kingdom Elusia. In theory, Hortensia has a very obvious character arc across the 3 chapters she is included in. Starting out as an annoying, prideful brat, she is humbled by her numerous losses before eventually choosing to right her wrongs and fight with the heroes. However, I don't think that what we see from Hortensia in Engage's main story is an arc at all. Instead, we get to see all of the smaller parts of Hortensia's character in isolated settings. Starting with the haughty facade she puts on for others, we then get to see what she's like behind the mask, where we are shown her incredible self-awareness and humility, her sincerity and kindness, and her fierce love of and adoration for her family. That's where our analysis will focus first: Hortensia's relationship with her family. Hortensia's relationships with King Hyacinth, Ivy, and her mother are integral to every aspect of her character. To start with, let's discuss her relationship with her father, King Hyacinth. We learn through the main story that Hortensia loves and respects her father, but also that that love is reciprocated. Or at least it was, until Hyacinth was changed through his contract with Sombron. During her conversation with Rosado in Chapter 10, Hortensia states that Hyacinth was a very loving father in times past, a sentiment that is backed up by both her and Ivy's posthumous boss conversations with Hyacinth in Chapter 17. Beyond that, on a more general level, Hortensia mentions Hyacinth a lot in her unvoiced lines, often lamenting his death in her post-battle exploration lines. For the most part, this relationship is a straightforward one. Simply a loving, father-daughter relationship that was tragically torn apart by the Fell Dragon. But despite their healthy personal relationship, it is not without its own baggage for Hortensia. For example, Hortensia's deep love and respect for her father seemingly led her to blindly believe whatever he would tell her. Based on Hortensia's position in the Elusian Academy, it is suggested numerous times that Hortensia is incredibly intelligent when it comes to academics. And yet, in her ace support with Rosado, he teases her about being particularly bad at history. Most likely, Brodian history. In Chapter 7, she says that it was her father that told her about the violence that the Brodians commit against Elusian citizens. This is true, mind you, her accusations aren't false, but her bond supports with Roy cast this as less historical fact-talking, and more so prejudice against Brodians. However, the real weight of that aspect of their relationship is somewhat tenuous. I'm not trying to argue that Hyacinth was deliberately trying to poison Hortensia's mind by encouraging prejudices of Brodians. Of course, this does happen, but Illusion resentment towards Brodians is relatively justified, considering their active campaigns against them. It does show some naivete on Hortensia's part for taking her father at his word about the people of Brodia, or perhaps even neglect of her own studies on Brodian history out of fear that her father might have been wrong about them, at least. Instead, a greater emphasis should be put on how Hortensia's relationship with her father unfortunately enforces her inferiority complex. In her A support with Lyndon, Hortensia admits that she believes her father would be disappointed in her, as she currently is. But how could that possibly be the case? Hortensia works hard in her studies, so hard that she skipped enough grades to catch up with Ivy, and as we learn in her A support with Fogado, she already helps Ivy with Illusian politics. Her dedication to rebuilding Illusia after the war is also something touched upon in numerous bond supports too, such as with Ike and Sigurd. But more poignantly than that, in her bond supports with Marth, it's stated that the reason Hortensia stayed behind in Illusia after Hyacinth died and Ivy joined Alir was to act as the monarch that the kingdom needed. And perhaps then she only pursued Ivy to Solm when she came to realize that Sombron was now the true leader of the kingdom. The loving father Hortensia insists Hyacinth was could never be disappointed in such a dedicated and hard-working daughter. But as an illegitimate child, Hortensia believes that she has something to prove. There is no doubt that Hortensia views herself as lesser because of her illegitimate status. And with that in mind, the fact that Hyacinth apparently held her so dear must have placed quite the burden of expectation on her shoulders. In a royal court that would do anything to oust her at any opportunity, she would have to prove herself more than worthy of that love. Hortensia works so hard so that she can stand by Ivy as an equal, to prove herself just as valuable as the legitimate child and heir to the kingdom. I believe that this idea is also backed up by Hortensia's character design, her hair specifically. In her bond supports with Corrin, we learn that Hortensia does indeed dye her hair, though whether it's the white or pink is left unsaid. Ultimately though, it doesn't really matter which one is dyed. Either one ties directly into her mission to prove herself part of the legitimate family. If her natural hair color is white, like her father's, then she likely dyes her hair pink to more closely match Ivy's purple. If her natural hair color is pink, she likely dyes her hair white to match Hyacinth's. If I had to argue more definitively, my guess would be that white is her natural hair color. In part that has to do with the giant elephant in the room, the fact that Illusia seems to be a direct callback to Nor from Fire Emblem Fates. It's pretty overt, so I won't break down all of the points of comparison, but of note for us, and something also pointed out by Corrin in these bond supports, is that Elise dyes her hair to look like Camilla. I would not be surprised if Hortensia also dyed her hair to look more like Ivy, if only for this comparison to exist. But outside of references to past games, I think a desire to be more like Ivy would fit quite well with that aforementioned inferiority complex. Hortensia works hard at the academy to get on Ivy's level. She's deeply involved in politics to support Ivy, and she ultimately believes that her father wouldn't be proud of her because she isn't Ivy. But everything that she is willing to do to benefit her family and kingdom, she doesn't believe it to be good enough. Fogado compares it to feeling like you need to move the entire Solm desert whilst only having a small bucket. That they can only do so much in the grand scheme of things when supporting their siblings. And although Hortensia agrees, it seemingly runs even deeper than that for herself. Returning to her A support with Lyndon, she even believes that he is doing more for the reconstruction of Illusia than her. No matter what, it seems that Hortensia believes that she just isn't good enough. I think that it is also worth mentioning a slightly different interpretation of all of this, though. Since Hortensia's entire life has revolved around putting on facades in court, perhaps she believes that the love of her father was also little more than a front. The truth of the matter isn't really that important. So long as Hortensia believes for even a moment that the love of her father, love that she so clearly desired, wasn't real, she'll never be able to see her achievements as good enough to earn it. Though I framed this whole analysis so far as being rooted in Hortensia's relationship with Hyacinth, I'm sure you've already put together that this matter of legitimacy and hard work is also deeply tied to her relationship with her sister, Ivy. In her bond supports with Micaiah, Hortensia wonders whether Ivy even loves her, considering that she left her behind in Illusia when she joined with the Divine Dragon. It's an idea taken even further in her C support with Ivy, where she outright asks Ivy if she could ever really love a half-sister. Ivy assures her time and time again throughout this support chain that she does, but that doubt still seems to loom in Hortensia's mind. It seems to be yet another consequence of her belief that she just isn't good enough because of her illegitimacy. And just to be clear, Hortensia does love Ivy. Her drive to work hard is not a wholly pragmatic effort to one day prove herself by surpassing the legitimate heir. But because she loves her sister just as much as she loves her father, that pressure to live up to their expectations, or at least what she assumes their expectations are, is even stronger. Tragically, Hortensia's support chain with Ivy doesn't fully resolve this dilemma of hers either. Others like Lyndon may assure her that she is valued, and that she does work hard. That never comes from Ivy. Yes, Ivy does love her. Yes, Ivy does value her. But the thing she specifically points out is not how hard Hortensia works, but her smile. As of yet, I haven't even loosely mentioned Hortensia's gimmick, her pursuit of cuteness and charm. It's something that comes up in a fair few supports of hers, and to begin with, we'll start with continuing to look at her supports with Ivy, as well as Alear. In Hortensia's C support with Alear, she makes it abundantly clear that being cute is incredibly important to her. It's something that she puts a lot of work into, with the ultimate purpose of it to make people like her more. From this scene alone, it's played as a very vapid trait, and Alear rightly calls out how superficial it is. Come their B support though, Hortensia tells Alear a deeper reason behind why she's so fixated on being charming. As one of the king's mistresses, Hortensia's mother was in a very dangerous position within the royal court. But through her charm and charisma, she found a place for herself there, even winning over the king's wife. To Hortensia, that is proof enough that charm is a powerful tool, one that could undoubtedly help her in her own quest to find a place in the royal family. However, Alear queries whether things were really so simple, if charm were really just a weapon for her own survival, or if it was more than that it was an attempt from a loving mother to teach her child a way to survive in the harsh court. This wasn't something Hortensia had seemingly ever considered, which leads very cleanly into her B support with Ivy, where she asks her for some information about who her mother really was. We learn in their A support that Hortensia's mother died when she was only 7 years old, so it's perhaps expected that Hortensia did not really understand the complexities of this charm. Alear proposes it, but Ivy in no uncertain terms confirms that it was the overwhelming kindness that her mother gave to others that was what really won over the court, not any superficial level of cuteness. This revelation changes Hortensia's perspective. She resolves to implement active kindness alongside her efforts to look cute, though ironically she also seems to miss the big picture with this new resolve as well. In part, this is because the first act of kindness she actively practices for Alear is to make them food. While definitely a genuine act of kindness, she does, after all, hate cooking and is not very good at it, according to her supports with Goldmary. It comes across as very transactional. Because she did something kind for Alear, they will like her more. It isn't a selfless kindness. It's an interesting sentiment about Hortensia that we can take from these two support chains. By Ivy's estimations, Hortensia is a wonderfully kind person by nature. That is the trait that lets her be a light in Ivy's life. But when Hortensia actively tries to practice being kind, it comes off as a little insincere. Kindness isn't a skill Hortensia needs to practice. It's a trait that she naturally possesses in spades. This repeated misinterpretation of charm, I believe, is reflective of something else that a few of Hortensia's supports touch on. That being, Hortensia is a child. Her supports with both Saline and Chloe show off the more childish side of Hortensia. In her support with Saline, her childish competitiveness is contrasted against Saline's calmer and more stoic demeanour. But the generally silly nature of the support portrays their relationship just as Saline wishes it was at the end of their C support, with Hortensia acting as more of a little sister. With Chloe, though, there is a distinct mother-daughter relationship between the two. Hortensia first approaches Chloe wishing to learn the art of maternal sophistication, which ultimately ends up with Chloe acting as something of a mother to Hortensia, wiping her face, telling her to drink water, that sort of thing. But their A support features one particularly somber line, one that Hortensia quickly brushes off, but the reality of which is clear. She laments that being around Chloe is difficult because she reminds her of what she doesn't have. In the moment, Hortensia corrects herself to say that she means that maternal sophistication, but in light of her mother's death, it seems obvious that what this really means is that being around Chloe only rubs it in that she has lost her real mother. Loss is just as crucial to Hortensia's life as anything else we have discussed so far. Losing her mother at a young age, her father during the story, and effectively her home to Sombron too. Not only that, but her position in court is tenuous as well. If her charms fail her, she could easily lose her place with Ivy, her only family left, just like all of her other illegitimate siblings. This constant threat of loss is perhaps just as much a motivator as her inferiority complex in her desperation to maintain her visage of cuteness. If that fails her, and those at court don't like the person they see beneath it, her life would effectively be over. Hortensia's supports with Rosado are all about her public image. The inciting incident for the support chain being Rosado drawing a picture of Hortensia looking more melancholic than cute. Hortensia demands said drawing be destroyed because she cannot let others see her as anything other than cute, charming, and bubbly. She specifically mentions future generations, but it's hard to imagine that this isn't also true for those alive in the present either, considering the purpose of this act in the court. In their B support, Hortensia further explains that always wearing a smile is part of a princess's duty. It's an idea not touched on in any of her other supports, but this reveals to us that her smile is something she puts on for the people of Illusia at large just as much as for the court. It's surely an assurance to the people that everything is fine, masking the struggle of just being Hortensia. This insistence of putting up a front is something that Rosado pushes back against throughout the entire support chain, insisting that the real Hortensia is far more appealing than the act she puts on. Ultimately, the two have to agree to disagree, though in their A support, Hortensia does agree to show her more genuine side to the people she loves, even if the world at large could never be allowed to meet the real her. Though this isn't to say that Hortensia isn't already quite open with the people she cares about most. She's very open and self-deprecating in the supports between herself and Ivy and Lyndon that we've already discussed. Albeit in a different way, she's also vulnerable in her supports with Goldmary, requesting help from her in developing skills she knows she lacks. And it's clear that Rosado is intimately familiar with the real Hortensia too. No doubt it's the fact that Rosado does know the real Hortensia so well that makes him so sad to see her hide it. In fact, the deep respect that Goldmary and Rosado have for Hortensia has nothing to do with the superficial layer of cuteness, but rather the genuine and kind person beneath it. On Goldmary's part, we learn in her A support with Hortensia that the first time they met was when Hortensia saved her on the battlefield. Without any thought of gaining glory from the act, Hortensia saved the life of an absolute stranger, and that alone garnered Goldmary's respect. As for Rosado, we actually have to turn to his A support with Goldmary to learn what first endeared him to her. A piece of advice she gave him when they first met at the academy. Cuteness means nothing if you don't apply yourself. Superficiality means nothing alone. It's a piece of advice that made Rosado reconsider how he approached his life at the academy, so I'm sure it cuts deep for him to see Hortensia portray herself as little more than just a cute face to so many others. It's perhaps important to note here that Rosado and Goldmary are not Hortensia's retainers. This is stated outright in Hortensia and Goldmary's B support, but it's also told to players through the fact that, unlike all of the other Royal Retainer trios, these three don't share any critical hit quotes. I bring this up because I think it's important to remember that Rosado and Goldmary aren't loyal to Hortensia because it's their job. They respect the person she truly is so much that they aspire to become her retainers. This relationship that the two have with her is a good demonstration of this charm we've heard all about. That charm that Ivy says people love her for and brings a light to the lives of everyone she meets. It's only implicitly told to us in the cases of Goldmary and Rosado, but support conversations allow us to see that charm in action. Hortensia's support chain with Clan is entirely about this, as it happens. At first, Hortensia approaches Clan with her usual veneer of cuteness and charm because she incorrectly hears that he's the leader of her fan club. As should be expected from what we just discussed, she uses this fake front on a member of the public that she assumes must only know and care about her for her surface-level charm. Clan, however, is off-put by Hortensia's act. Become their B support, she wins him over. Not by being cute, but by being kind and genuine. She apologizes to him for being so pushy about making a fan club, and admits that she was so insistent on him making one for real at the end of the C support was because she already told people that she had a fan club. Not only does she own up to it, but she also goes on to tell the truth to everyone else she spoke to about the fan club. The genuine side of her is what charms Clan enough that he does actually end up creating a fan club for her in their A support. It's a simple, sweet support that very plainly sends the message that the real Hortensia is the one people truly adore. Clan describes her as abrasive but kind, which is something we see in much more detail in her support chain with Ulchrist. Ulchrist approaches her in their C support to learn how to be confident from her, and although Hortensia isn't open about it in this particular conversation, she spends the rest of the chain doing her best to help him. In their C support, she attempts to do this through a bit of cruelty, insinuating that she would never help him because he's a Brodian. She expects him to stand up for himself in the face of prejudice, but instead he agrees and leaves. This support actually offers an interesting parallel to Chapter 7, wherein Hortensia does this exact same thing, and Ulchrist does actually snap back at her. But that's a detail better suited for an Ulchrist analysis. In their B support, she tries a different approach. She calls him a friend, apologizes for her previous attempt, and compliments him on his own cuteness. Instead of building confidence by having him strike out against her, she tries to build up Ulchrist's own self-image. Her kindness is far more overt this time, but it garners the same reaction from Ulchrist, and he runs off. In their A support, Hortensia gives it one more attempt. Though she tells him that she's given up on teaching him to be confident her way, she tells him that he's already charming the way he is. He may be skittish and pessimistic on the surface, but there's more to him than that, and he should be confident in those parts of himself. And this time she seems to get through to him. Maybe a bit too well, considering she ends up being the one to run off in embarrassment this time. These two support chains do a great job at showing off how naturally kind Hortensia is. She doesn't hesitate for a second to help Alchrist, and is relentless in trying to get him to have confidence in himself. With Clan, she displays her natural humility and self-deprecation. Kindness isn't something she needs to practice like she thinks she does in her A support with Alir. She's already mastered it. Personally though, I think the thing I find most charming about Hortensia are those moments of abrasiveness, especially in her Alchrist support. It isn't exactly kind to call him a quivering pile of pessimism to his face, but the frank honesty is both funny and quite charming. It may not be very princess-like of her, but it feels very genuine. I completely understand how the real Hortensia earned the respect of so many. To finish this analysis, I have saved one support chain. A support chain that truly shows how kind to the core Hortensia really is. A support chain with Veil. The C support begins just as one would expect. Hortensia holds nothing but bitter resentment towards Veil. Even if it technically wasn't the Veil she now knows, nothing will change the fact that someone sharing her face laughed at her father's death. The B support mostly features Veil discussing the difficulties faced by her mother because of her union with Sombron. The support never calls direct attention to it, but this obviously serves as something Hortensia can relate to Veil through. Her own mother suffered immensely because of her own love affair. The story alone isn't enough to change Hortensia's feelings, though it does push her to apologize to Veil for assuming her life must have been easier because of her nature as a dragon. And yet, come their A support, it seems like Hortensia finds the kindness in her heart to see Veil for who she really is. Even though Hortensia plays it off that she may still hate Veil for the part she played in her father's death, she clearly wants to move past it. She brings Veil sweets that she remembered she liked from back when Veil first appeared in Illusia, and she clearly gets excited about getting to know Veil as a person. In a sense, this support chain challenges a lot of what makes Hortensia who she is. When faced with someone she has every right to hate, can she maintain that smile, just like her mother did when she was alive? With Veil, Hortensia has to put aside the superficial. The only thing the Veil that she knows has in common with the one who laughed at her father's death is their face. And when she does, the kindness in her heart shines through, and Hortensia finds it within herself to see who Veil really is. Hortensia's love for her father was and is immense, yet she still finds the resolve for forgiveness. Hortensia's life is nothing short of a string of tragedies. Born an illegitimate daughter in an environment that sought to purge her, losing both of her parents at a young age, saddled with the belief that she can never truly be good enough. Perhaps worse, she puts on a front so that people will like her more, a crucial tool for her survival, and yet it's the real her that those closest to her adore the most. It isn't her cuteness that charms everyone she meets. It's the real her that does. The honest, kind soul who works harder than anyone else. Ivy may be the one who the history books remember for bringing Illusia into a golden age, but I have no doubt that that would have been impossible without a certain hard-working ray of light by her side. And that's the analysis, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. I don't know how confident I am in this one, so I really would appreciate your feedback. Perhaps even more so than on the Saline video for this time around. Of course, you know, I'm not exactly an expert after writing one essay, or I guess two now. So, you know, I have plenty of room to grow, and I'd much appreciate the help from you guys. You know, I'm not too sure if I liked how everything flowed together. I don't know if I am fully on board with how I went about arguing all of the things that I did, but honestly, this was quite a challenge to write, and mostly because I know people already really like Hortensia. I didn't really have an agenda to come at this one at, just like I did the Saline video. You know, I couldn't really stand here and talk about how, or well, I couldn't really use this vague term of, yeah, I'm gonna prove that Engage's writing isn't bad with Hortensia, because I feel like most people's response to Hortensia is, oh man, yeah, I met her in Chapter 7 and I thought I was gonna hate her, but by the time I recruited her and she was all done with her stuff in the story, and then I saw her support, it's like, man, wow, she's one of the best written characters in Engage. Right? And I mean, further proving that point, you guys voted for Hortensia to get a video. Clearly she is quite popular already. But, you know, I still wanted to do a video on her, of course. I wouldn't have put her as an option on that poll if I just didn't want to do a Hortensia video. Yeah, speaking of that poll, there actually won't be a poll for next time. And yes, there will be a next time. Even if, you know, you didn't like this video as much. You know, or you think I fell off. There will be a next time. And a time after that, and a time after that, at least. The next 3 videos for this series, I guess, I have planned out already. I haven't written anything for them, but I know exactly what I'm going to do and in what order I'm going to do them. And I've actually already revealed what the next one's going to be, so I'll tell you right now. The next video, that probably will come out quicker than this last one, is going to be that video on the 4 hounds. Specifically, 3 of them, Zephyr, Gris, and Marnie, but that's for next time. It'll be a bit of a different video compared to the other 2. They won't have supports, for example, so it's going to be entirely about the story. I'll save all I have to say about them for next time. I will say, though, before I drop off here, hey, if one of you posts this on Reddit, I don't mind, actually. I know you posted the Saline one. I don't actually mind. You can do that, you know. It gets the video out to more people, and ultimately that's the goal. I don't need personal glory or anything, but hey, the least you can do is say that you weren't the one who made the video. I don't want people thinking I'm a Redditor, after all. In all seriousness. Hey, I'm watching you. I'm doing a little point, but, you know, you can't see this, because I'm just playing Engage footage right now. Anyway, I'm very excited to see the comments on this one. Not only for the criticisms and advice, but I'm also very interested in seeing your guys' thoughts about Hortensia. There were a lot of really interesting comments on the Saline video. I responded to quite a few of them. Yeah, I'd love to see your guys' mini essays in the comments as well. I don't know how clear I made this in the Saline video, so I'm just gonna say this here. In this one in particular, there were things that I purposely decided just not to include, because I really don't want my videos to be the be-all, end-all of character discussion and character analysis. I want to miss things out so you guys can talk about it in the comments and open up other interpretations, right? It's very easy for, you know, for people to see, oh yeah, this content creator had this opinion. They made a video about it, therefore they must be, their opinion must matter more, therefore we will absorb it and it will become fandom opinion. And I don't want that. I would never want that. Don't get me wrong, I don't have that, you know, big enough of an ego to believe that my opinion about Saline or Hortensia would be the defining interpretation of these characters, but you know what I mean, right? It's very easy for you to just see someone else's opinion, take it, and run with it. And knowing a plagiarism way, but just like, oh yeah, they said this, therefore it has to be this way. And, I don't know, content creators just have more of a sway in that regard, I guess? I don't know, I guess it's the idea that they have a voice, therefore, you know, they must be credible, I guess? I don't know. No shade against content creators or anything, but, I mean, Fire Emblem is not, you know, the only fandom that has this kind of problem. Pretty much everything does. Yeah, sorry, a bit rambly for the end card there. I thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you for watching this. And if you watched all the way to this point, I don't know, I'm not going to tell you to do something cringe, like put a specific word in the comments to farm engagement, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't really have an outro. I don't know, well, instead of doing something cringe like telling you to leave a comment and put woof in your or something in your comment if you watch this far to let me know that you're a real one. Don't do that. For the love of God, don't do that. I don't know. Should I have like some really cringy outro that's like, oh yeah, thanks for watching and shine on, emblems. Oh god, I died a little bit on the inside saying that. Okay. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope to see you again for another character analysis. Or not if you hated this one. You're entitled to your opinions. But hopefully I'll see you again. Oh, and I guess as like one final note, I've got other videos. If you want me to see me actually playing Fire Emblem, there's an Iron Man going on right now, and later this summer there's gonna be another one. Not on Engage though, that one's gonna be on Three Houses again. Maybe I'll see you there, maybe I won't.